This conference will now be recorded.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Postsecondary Perkins Learning Community Call. Today, our topic of focus is the Comprehensive Local Needs Assessment. We do have some individuals on the call that will be speaking to this. Patty Zuccarello from Joliet and Bonnie Campbell from Illinois Valley. Marcy Rocky from OCCRL is also on the call, and she will be sharing some of the technical assistance that they will be providing to you guys later on in this call. But first, we're going to get started with Patty and Bonnie, and they're going to kind of jump into how they've been tackling the Comprehensive Local Needs Assessment and sort of what their process has been when coming to complete this. So Patty and Bonnie, I will hand it over to you.
Great. Can you guys hear me?
We can.
Okay, how about can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
All right, well, that's a good first step.
Bonnie, I'll start with just kind of the overview of how we approach this item. So one of the things that Bonnie and I were trying to figure out was what information does each of our institutions already collect and report out. So we thought if we could start by kind of making a list of what we already have, and then we could kind of match that to what the needs assessment is asking us to do. That'll help us figure out where the gaps are and what we actually still have to collect. So for Joliet, we have a pretty significant office for institutional research and effectiveness, and they do a lot with data dashboards and reports that we can run internally. So in terms of looking at underrepresented populations, disaggregating the data, we do a survey just for special populations. So all of those things, we were thinking, okay, we already had that kind of handled. And then we also use MC, and we can run reports there to look at labor market data. But probably the best thing that I found from our institutional research office is the environmental scan that we do every few years, and that looks at the district as a whole and the changing demographics in terms of age and race and degrees already completed and employment, and it looks at top industries and top employers. So I was pretty fortunate in that I had a lot of these kinds of pieces to already pull from to complete the report.
And I, on the other hand, from Illinois Valley, am really jealous of what Patty has, because we don't have functioning data dashboards. And so what I've had to do is kind of look to our IR department, our IT department, and try to figure out what they're collecting, how I can request information. We have a lot there because of individual requests that have been made for individual pieces of data, but it's trying for me to pull it all together. We will be using MC, and we are working on that. And the other thing that I just got yesterday was from our Workforce Development Board, and it's their
Bonnie,
economic.
I hate to interrupt you, but you're echoing a little bit. Do you have your speakers going at the same time?
Maybe I do. Is that better?
I think so. Say
Okay.
some more things.
Okay, say some more things. Okay. Let's see. We just got our WIOA report.
Yeah, much better.
Okay. So that's the local workforce labor data, and then we are in an 8-county area. I asked them to pull our large 3 counties that IBCC works with, and they kind of gave that to me, which has a lot of the same kind of data that Patty's got in her environmental scan and with her data dashboard. So I'm kind of cobbling together and trying to be creative in finding of data, which is challenging.
So we were thinking we could go kind of section by section with the needs assessment and talk about where we're planning on getting data or where we've already found data for each area. So Brittany, can you get us to section 1? Great. Okay, so when you look at this section, a lot of this is things that you might already have somewhere. For us, a lot of this came from the environmental scan. It also came from parts of our program reviews. We also do an annual program update. So some of this information we ask folks to report on annually. So for example, item number 1, to what extent are your programs representative of your district's demographics? So our district data is reported in our environmental scan, and we can see which populations are growing, and then we can compare that to each program in the program reviews. I think part of what's going to be tricky for us is we have about 47 CTE programs, so it's going to be kind of a lot of work to somehow get that information kind of collated. But once we do, that'll also give us answers to the next couple of questions, like which populations are underrepresented and what have we done to recruit, because all of that is also in our annual program update and our program reviews.
And we have a lot of that similar information in our program updates and in our program review that we do, the 5-year program review, but also the annual review. We'll be using a lot of MC data for this. So, and again, like Patty said, if you kind of take the first one, the first question, your answers kind of get, or your questions kind of get answered as you go down. We also do an individualized Perkins survey that we send out to all of our CTE students, and I'm hoping to be able to get a lot of self-declared information through that too that we don't have in other places.
And we do the same kind of survey that Bonnie was just describing. I think the trick for us is we usually deploy it in the spring. So this year we're going to deploy it in the fall to get that data sooner. What I'm trying to do is get all of my needs assessed, get all the data anyway by the end of November, so that I can work on kind of pulling it all together in December and January in time for our internal Perkins application cycle.
Which is kind of the same line, timeline that I'm looking at.
Could I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is Josh with Stock Valley Community College. Hi, everyone.
Hey, Josh.
So, Bonnie, Patty, so when you say you're sending out a survey to CTE students, and maybe you're going to go into this a little bit later, but what kind of specifics are in that survey? Are you just looking for demographic information, or like efficacy, like how the program's working, or what kind of stuff?
The things that we send, it's more about, it's a Survey Monkey, and then inside it is basically the special POPs identification sections. And then we do also put a couple questions in there about like whether or not you've seen an advisor. So like there, and some other services, but for the most part, it's identify yourself as one of these possible special populations. So then we can kind of figure out where we need to concentrate support or resources. The problem really for me with the survey is it ends up, it's a little scattershot yet in terms of who responds. So you'll see kind of concentrations of some of the bigger programs. So like nursing is a pretty large student body. So you'll see a concentration of students in nursing, a concentration of students in culinary. It's a smaller program, but their faculty really support the survey. Mm-hmm. So my issue really with the survey is it gets a little skewed depending on which faculty really support it. So I think that's the piece we have to also figure out, is to make faculty more aware that the survey is being rolled out and to encourage students so we get a bigger cross-section of folks. But for the most part, we're just looking for which special populations do they identify with, if any.
And ours is a little bit different, Josh. We do ours paper and pencil. So at the beginning of the semester, all of our CTE, we choose which CTE courses we're going to go in and survey. And I get a pretty good message out to the program coordinators, and then we get those back slowly but surely. We've gotten, I mean, I think we sent out 1,000, and we've gotten almost 700 back for this semester. So it's really the paper and pencil. We tried to do Survey Monkey, and it just didn't work. So we're going to stay old school for a while. But we ask the same kind of questions that Patty's talking about, to self-identify into those subpopulations. We also try to get at program of study in ours too, because our way that we monitor and manage program of study is really kind of convoluted. So we try to get that from students. And then a big question we ask is, have you talked to a counselor? Would you like a counselor to contact you? And then we turn that over to our counseling center, and then they make, for those students who want to be contacted, they make a phone call.
Okay, great. Thank you. Yeah, because that was just kind of, I haven't thought about a survey yet. I was thinking more along the lines of our, student information form when somebody signs up to SOC, integrating those special POPS questions into that. But this might make even more sense. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I'd love to say that it was my idea, but it really wasn't. I got it from somebody down south, I can't remember where, and kind of took their form and kind of adapted it to what we needed to do. But we really have gotten some good information from it, and I'm hoping that it's going to seed, it looks like it will seed a lot of the information we're going to need for the needs assessment.
Great idea, thank you.
Well, and Josh, don't reinvent the wheel. If that's something you want to do, we can share our surveys.
Yeah, I can easily send that off to you, Josh.
That's wonderful, thanks. I was not going to ask that in front of the 29 people, but yes, that would be great. Thank you.
I think that those might have been all of our insights for section 1. Bonnie, can you think of anything else?
No, I think that, again, it was the Perkins survey that we were using a lot of, and just some of it just had to be working with student services, I know, on the transitioning piece into CTE. So I think that there's, the important thing is to find the person, the department that you think is going to be able to give you the most help, and just get with them now with the questions early so they have time to kind of formulate an answer for you.
Yeah, agreed.
Ladies, I have a question for you. We have several showing interest in the survey questions. Would you be willing to share that with me, and then I could put it on the ICSPS website under our learning community page?
Sure.
Okay, perfect.
So Brittany, you want to scroll to student performance? So again, I think this is one of those areas where the program review can be kind of your friend, because it'll already have enrollment, retention, completion, disaggregation by race and gender and age. We also look a lot at what the plan is to eliminate the equity gap. So I think for us that's a big piece of program review, and then also our annual program update process.
And I think that too, with the equity gap piece and with the disaggregation of data, and I know that, I think across the state we're all in different places in terms of how we can get that information out, and we haven't done a really good job of disaggregating our data and kind of looking, maybe when you're smaller you have a better sense. I don't know if that's true or not, but you think you're deluded into the fact that you have a better sense about what's going on with your population of students. But it's really showing some very interesting things as we, I feel like I've become the preaching of equity queen here in terms of making sure that everybody's looking at the data and trying to figure out where the gaps might be. And so I think from that perspective, this might be looking at this needs assessment is like daunting, but it's really going to give us some good information going forward on how best to work with students. That's what I keep trying to tell myself.
Well, and I think for this section, where I'm more concerned is not the first part of the questions, but kind of these back three questions about, like on the next page, like how are your CTE students performing in certain gateway courses to high wage and high demand sectors? Because that is something we don't really have data on. Like I can look at English 101, but I can't disaggregate it by major. So what I think is going to happen is this first go round, I'm probably just going to look at things like English 101, English 130, which is our technical writing class, look at technical math, kind of some of those gateways, and then also just kind of the overall, how are students performing, and I can disaggregate that by race and see if there are differences between, you know, how white students perform versus other kinds of minority students. So I think some of these I'm going to punt a little bit, honestly, just because we don't necessarily have the data organized in the way the question's asking us to look at it. And then I also think the Perkins students' performance measures, that's going to be a little bit puntish this first time through. And then, and I think the last question about how we assess student learning is something that's kind of a perennial thing we're trying to improve on at our institution in terms of how you can really do a better job blueprinting from the classroom level up to the program level.
And I know one of the things that Patty and I talked about with that student growth and improvement is looking at the programs that we think do a really good job of it, like, you know, nursing or like some of your accredited programs where they really have to document a lot more and see if there's some best practices that we can pull across to some of our other programs to get that kind of working forward.
Yeah. Anybody else have questions or ideas about student performance?
Yeah, and please, if you've got any ideas of how you've started looking at some of this stuff and it seems to be working, please share with us because I think we're all in the same boat.
We are recording the call, but it's still very informal. Please feel free to unmute yourself if you have a question. You can always type in the chat box. It's still a conversation.
I'll ask another general question. So when I was looking at this with our institutional research and planning director, it kind of feels like I just keep going back to, you know, looking at us doing a program review basically for every CTE program we have, and utilizing that as well as other data like WIOA, and really, you know, honing in on the inequities that may exist there. But I was just kind of curious if outside a lot of these other really good ideas on how to get data and this environmental scan and whatnot, I'd just be curious to hear if other people are just kind of looking at this, going to start with it as kind of like a program review exercise and then take it from there. Patty, I've always liked the fact that you assess your programs annually, but you know, we're just on the 5-year cycle here, and so I just feel like that going into this year is going to be a giant entire CTE kind of program review to get through this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, agreed. And I'm kind of excited that since we do it every year, this will finally seem to be more of a reason to some people.
Yeah.
You know, and I agree with you, Patty. We do ours every year too, Josh. And, you know, we don't go to the extent that we do in the 5-year, but we look at data and numbers and cost, and we're adding a couple of more things based on this to that annual program review. But I'm also hoping that people will take a look at it and look at it as a really relevant piece of information.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, yeah, this is cause, even though I know it's going to be once every 2 years going forward, that to kind of integrate this in an annual basis as opposed to every 5 years. It's kind of seems like it's going to be a necessity for us from now on.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and even if you went to just every 2 years to synchronize with the local needs assessment, you know what I mean? Like, even if it's too much to jump from 5 years to every year, you could do just every 2 years.
Yep. That's a great point. That would be probably a good start. At least selling it to faculty that way. Two would be a little easier than one.
Right.
You could even sell it as, I was going to do it every year, but
I'm giving you a break, so we're going to every other year. Exactly.
Yep. The old foot in the door technique. Can I borrow 1,000? Okay, how about $10?
Well, and I really, to your point though, Josh, I really think the trick is going to be, what do you do this coming year that we're in? Because at this point, to have to backtrack and do all of those APUs or all of the program reviews, I think would be potentially more than you really can do in the time that we've got.
Yep.
You know, but even if you just did them on whatever the Workforce Investment Board or whatever MC or whatever WIOA is telling you are the hot industries in your area, like even if you just did program reviews on those 5 industries, you know what I mean? As like a way to at least start to figure out what the approach could be.
That's a great point, and use those as a template for the kind of the 2-year cycle down the road. Yeah, that's a great idea.
And Josh, they can drill in for you into your specific counties, because Josh and I share the same Workforce Development Board, and I took your counties out and just had them do mine. Diana can do that for you.
Okay.
And it might be helpful to just take a look at that in comparison to the overall region.
Okay, absolutely. I'll reach out to them. Thanks.
I think honestly, though, when I look at these numbers that we got from the Workforce Development Board and I look at the MC data, I think you're going to be looking at both of them together, because MC is reading a little bit different in terms of those key sectors of growth than what our Workforce Development Board is. So I think we're going to have to look at, that's a big part of, I think, trying to filter through a lot of this is we've got workforce data, we've got MC data, and then we've got your advisory councils and different boards that are telling you different things that they need within their organization. So I think it's just going to be pulling it all together with a common sense perspective.
Yep, and looking for those overlaps and focusing on them.
Yep.
Yeah, agreed. Ready to move on to section 3?
Hey, this is Brad from Spoon River.
Hi, Brad.
Hi.
I just kind of have a follow-up question. I might have missed this in the beginning, but can someone tell me did you get specific reports from your workforce folks with those numbers?
Actually, our president got one just yesterday and sent it over to us. It's called an economic update. I can send it to you so you can see what it looks like if you want me to, Brad. And
that'd
then
be great.
Go kind of looking for it. Okay.
That's what I'll do. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, are we moving on to 3?
Yeah, you want to move on to 3?
Yeah, we can move on to 3. So, recruitment, retention, and training of CTE educators. I essentially have turfed this at the moment to our HR department and our deans to try to see if I can get them to answer some of these questions and see what they come up with. I think HR is a good place to start, and I think that what we're going to find in this section per se is that everything that we do, not everything, I shouldn't say everything, but a lot of what we do with our new CTE faculty in terms of developing them as teachers is done. We don't have a specific plan. They get assigned mentors. We have a new faculty orientation, but I think that we're going to find out that we need to make changes in this area, and that's why I'm trying to get as many people kind of involved in it as I can to try to learn what it is maybe they're doing that the rest of us don't know. And
I thought about turfing this off, and then I realized that we actually have don't hate me, Bonnie, a data dashboard
I know.
HR.
So you don't have to turf.
So I don't have to turf, although maybe I should. So for me, I can go and I can look at the data dashboard. I can look at it by faculty, by staff, by administrators, and see how diverse our employees are. And then for some of these, though, I am going to turf them off to, I feel like chairs and coordinators would know certain answers, like which programs of study do we need to recruit and develop more educators. And then what Bonnie said too, we do have, everyone's got the tenure process. We also have mentors in ours, but we're also doing some different things with professional development and how we're asking faculty to imagine and then validate their professional development as they go through that process. I really think the last, what's the one? Is it the last one? The second to last question about how do you ensure that your CTE program leadership is culturally responsive? We just embarked on a diversity and inclusion project at JJC, and that's probably going to be one of those where I may not turf it off to them, but I think that's going to be kind of central to my answer there, is working with them and looking at the strategic plan that they're working on and thinking about how this kind of fits there.
The one piece that I would add to that, don't forget about your high school partners who are teaching dual credit courses along with you. And many of them might also be bringing a certain element of diversity to that CTE instruction.
That's
yeah,
a good
that's
thought,
a great point.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else you wanted to say on that one, Pat?
I'm looking at my notes.
I know, me too.
Nope, I think that's more or less.
I think this area is probably an area that most of us will have a lot of opportunity to provide responses to improve this area. So I think, a lot of it is just collecting that base data, but I think it also gives that framework so that when we're developing the plan, obviously professional development will be mandated, but to always keep in mind and getting that, especially groups from underrepresented among your faculty and staff.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, I agree with that one too. I think this is going to be, like I said, this is a good area for us to really grow and take a look at what we do and do a better job of it.
So the next section is stakeholder participation and voice. And I don't know that we actually had a strategy for that other than to just compile the list of all of the various moving parts and who people have been and what they gave input on.
Yeah, I think that's really, when we were sitting down and trying to figure some of this stuff out, we didn't spend a whole lot of time here because that's what we thought we'd do. You compile it, you figure out who they are and what their role in the process has been.
Yeah, I hope that's not a mistake.
Yeah, I know.
like maybe what we want to do is like a preliminary list and then see who we're missing and backtrack and figure out how to gather those folks' input.
We're planning at COD to do additional surveys specifically this fall, hitting our advisory group members as well as those special groups that really need to be mandated, representatives from the special POPs group, parents and students, really making sure that we have a vehicle, if not a venue, where they could share their feedback and input on both the development of the comprehensive assessment, and then once we start doing the strategic planning for the 4-year plan.
would COD be willing to share their instruments?
Sure. We're like I'm saying, we're right in the middle of developing them, but we'd be happy to share.
That would be great.
Thanks, Janita. Because we have basically, so the next section with the labor market alignment, again, we're looking at, sorry, this is, Maria Rosa, are you asking about me? So at JJC, what we're looking at doing with labor market is information from our Workforce Investment Board and from MC, but we're also doing an advisory committee survey that includes just 5 questions that are taken, kind of distilled from this section of questions. So we're asking them about the credentials that they use from our institution. We're asking them if our program is generating enough trained workforce for them. We're asking if they're projecting increase, decrease, or flat hiring for the next 5 years, and then any diversification needs that they have or other needs that may not be getting met by our program. So we're just going to do like a 5-question paper survey to the advisory committee members. And then the program coordinators are taking those paper surveys, tallying them, and then entering it into a Google form for me with raw numbers and percentages for each of those answers. So then I can just pull it back through on the back side of the form and it'll already be tallied. So that's kind of the one piece where we're going to try to use more advisory input.
And we're basically, I kind of have stolen that idea from Patty. We're going to basically use the same kind of survey. And we're in the process of trying to figure out so we don't duplicate, because we have different people on different advisory boards, or I'm sorry, same people on different advisory boards based on, you know, being a smaller community. So making sure that they don't get the same thing twice. And so we're in the process of doing that for all of our advisory boards as well.
I have a question.
Okay.
Paul Carlson from Kankakee Community College. Under section 4, there is a statement about statement number 6, representatives of regional or local agencies serving out of school youth, homeless children, youth at risk, specifically in elementary and secondary. So I don't know Perkins 5 well enough yet, but Patty, Bonnie, Brittany, is there any comprehensive analysis that our secondary partners who accept Perkins funding also are having to accomplish? And might there be some way that we can merge some of what they're finding out to our dual credit side of the world, and then section 4 in particular?
I hope so.
Yes, they do. They have a comprehensive local needs assessment that they are also going to be doing. I am not sure that theirs has been released to them yet. But yes, so it's not going to be exactly the same as this one. But they are also doing something very similar. And it is, I know, ICCB's hope and ISB's hope that everyone kind of communicates and works together. Because, yeah, I think it's been said multiple times on this call, we don't want you guys to have to recreate the wheel. And if someone has this information, or if, you know, we don't want 2 different entities going to the same people to collect the same information. That's kind of overkill. So definitely communicate with your secondary partners, because they too will be completing something very similar to this. And so if you guys can work in tandem together, that's kind of our, and when I say our, I say ICCB and ISB, the snow globe idea of everybody working together to complete their CLNAs.
Thank you.
And I think, like you said, in that stakeholder participation, number 4 and number 6 would be great information to be able to get from them. I know that we've been working. We're lucky. We work very closely with our EFE, and they're just kind of waiting to get their hands on the document, and then we're going to sit down and figure out what they can get, what I can get, what we can share. So we're just kind of on hold until it's released to them, which hopefully it will be soon.
So for where are we? Number 5?
We're still on number 5.
Alignment.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry.
One of the things that I know we talked a little bit about, and I don't know how you all work with your postgraduate surveys, but we don't have very good luck getting information from our students who complete our programs or complete courses and go out into the workforce. We send a survey that nobody responds to, except for the key accredited programs. They have a tendency to get a lot of data back from their graduates. And so we were talking about trying to do a survey monkey to a set population as we try to, get program coordinators to more identify who their graduates are, who their completers are. But that one's going to be, I'm not quite sure how to get my head around that one.
Well, but Bonnie, you had that idea about if we could find a way to ask for personal emails on the graduation petition.
Oh, yeah, I did have that idea, didn't I? Flu brain.
I know.
Yeah,
but I think if we
did talk about that.
Capture that, yeah. Then I think that's a way that we can at least get personal emails. We've also been talking at Joliet about asking students as they're finishing to give the program coordinators personal emails, and then once we have the survey ready to deploy, it'll be the program coordinator who sends it to their personal emails because they recognize that person, as opposed to if it comes from the institutional research office, they don't necessarily know who any of those people are. So that's what we were thinking of as a possible shot at increasing the response rate on that. But I do think for this first go round, again, are there racial inequities in the labor market that our graduates are experiencing? That's going to be something I'm probably not going to know in time to give a solid data-based from our own graduates kind of answer. And then some of these other items, I'm hoping we'll be able to use projects we've done collaboratively with adult education, like IET and ICAPS, to look at their transition specialist position and kind of how they kind of help transition English language learners over to our side of the house.
Mm-hmm.
And then working with Disability Services Office and other people in student development who kind of help prepare students who have needs beyond what's going on in the classroom.
To me, this section, when I look at it if I just overview it, it looks daunting. But when you look at the questions, I think there's a lot of overlap in some of the questions here. And I think even with other places in the survey that it's not all new data. Does that make sense?
Yep. And a lot of this, too, is things that you would need to provide ICCB if you were starting a new program, right? Like those questions kind of toward the end about using data to support missed opportunities and that kind of thing. It's probably something that you already have for recent program development that you've done. And ideally, again, in program review, going back and looking at your data there, too. So I think for this part, we're talking again about MC, APU, program review, advisories, that kind of thing.
That kind of thing.
Workforce centers. Yep. which might be something too. I know Marcy's on the call. When we do suggested resources, it might also be good to put other resources there that are reports that we already run for ICCB or processes we already do, in addition to just the documents.
And I do want to mention that this is this comprehensive local needs assessment that you're looking at on the screen is still technically in draft form, since it is a part of the state plan, which has been released for public comment. So if you have suggestions on this, the same email address that ICCB provided for public feedback for the state plan, you can also suggest edits or make comments about the CLNA on that as well. And I don't remember the email address off the top of my head, but I know it's the cte.iccb, that whole long email address that they have. So I did just want to put that out there to everyone as well, that this is still technically draft.
And Brittany, that's going to come out of its draft state once the listening sessions are all completed and all that information is compiled, right?
I believe so. I can't give a definite yes or no,
Okay.
but I think that is the idea. And again, if you have specific questions about the CLNA, ICCB is the best source for you guys to reach out to.
And Brittany, if we can't make it to one of those listening sessions, we can just give feedback to ICCB directly in regards to this, and that will be noted, or?
Yes, so I did share in the chat box the URL link as to where all of this is posted. Whitney also sent that out to the Perkins listserv as well. So yeah, you don't have to be present at one of the listening sessions in order to provide feedback. You can review it online and submit your feedback via email as well.
Okay, thanks.
Bonnie, do you have any more for section 5, or are you ready for 6?
I'm ready to move on to 6. I'm looking, I don't see anything else. So to me, again, with section 6, it's looking at the information from your program reviews, your advisory groups, your student surveys. I think, we have a chief manufacturing executive group that meets on a quarterly basis that give us a lot of feedback about what's going on with our students in industry. So, and I think that we're going to get at part of this data by the survey that Patty already talked about. Just the 5 simple questions are going to give us, I think, some good information for the section 2.
For this part, yeah, agreed. Yep. And again, the program reviews and then any other data that you do related to that. But if you look at the program review, those kinds of items about, need, cost, and quality, but all of your labor market information, market changes all in there. Cost, I think you can also look at in terms of whether or not it's a barrier for students or components are barriers. Like, for us, do you need certain specialized equipment or uniforms or things like that that are kind of outside of the normal what the bookstore vendor has? And then I also think this also leads in, I think, to the next part about programs of study, because you start to figure out stackable credentials and whether or not some of your programs are really in tight alignment with industry, and then also just in a stackable design.
Yeah, I just think a lot of this is going to be, again, taking another look at and analyzing what we already have and some of the, especially the ICCB reports, program reviews, what you're doing internally.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like most of us are probably in good shape with this section, which unfortunately is the shortest section. How about you want to take a crack at 7?
Okay.
Programs of study.
Programs of study. You know, we're internally doing a lot of work with programs of study right now, and trying to clean up some things and make it less complicated for students. But I think that, you know, we're really trying to look at the different pathways to employment, which is what we're getting from our advisory committees and our CME group. They've been telling us for quite a while to stack our credentials because they think that it's going to be more beneficial to them to get people into the workforce and then send them back to us to continue that training. So we're kind of just looking at that and then really working right now with transitioning those students from the dual credit areas over into programs here on campus.
And I think we're doing a lot of work too with programs of study this year. I think when back in the days, which maybe was even just a year ago, where you only needed one completed program of study to qualify for Perkins, we kind of rode that train for a while. So over the last couple of months, I've been working with our department chairs to really start figuring out which programs of study need some tending and which ones are really doing well. So I think it's going to be kind of a process of also including the advisories, and we also do a lot of work, I'm sure you guys do too, with dual credit, and we have a dual credit advisory committee that I think is also going to help us kind of figure out which programs of study need a little more care and feeding on the secondary end of things. But I'm optimistic overall. Like, I actually think this section will be good for us to think about and work through.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
I think probably all of us have been thinking about it and working through some of this for the last couple of years, especially the last year. So I think this is going to be just a natural kind of thing that we're going to figure out.
Yeah. Yeah, agreed. Does anyone have any questions about 7? Okie dokie. Well, and then so for 8 is where we actually do the plan, which I'm assuming the way I'm preparing to handle number 8 is that it's just a giant summary of all the data we gathered for items 1 through 7.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So far I just have summary of preceding as the information in those boxes.
Mm-hmm. Which is kind of what I have.
Right.
I think one of the good things for me in trying to talk through and work through this process is I have a tendency to like overreact on some of this stuff. I see all these questions and I think, oh my goodness, I know that we're not as sophisticated as some other institutions in terms of how we collect our data. But that's why Patty's been great to kind of walk me off that ledge to say, no, look, you got some of it. And I think that, you know, talking through some of this stuff is really, really, really important because we're all kind of struggling with it, and don't think that you're out there on that ledge all alone.
Yeah, agreed. Well, and I also think, again, find a Bonnie and find a Patty of your own, or you can join up with our little merry band, I suppose, because we've really, I think, both benefited from having the other person as someone you can say, like, hey, what are you going to do for this question? in section 3, or what are you going to do over here in section 5? And I think, again, necessity being the mother of invention, we have a lot of good ideas between us that I think will kind of make this process easier for everyone. And on the days that it's scary, yes, you have someone to just kind of hold your hand and be like, it's going to be all right. We're going to get through this. And yeah, I think to the extent possible, use data your institution already has on hand. I think this whole process is a lot less intimidating when you think about what do you already have and what does that already answer.
And I would agree.
Does anybody else have questions or ideas that we didn't cover?
Can I ask one more quick question on the WIOA report, Bonnie, that you recently got?
Yeah.
So is that just a simple request to our local or to our WIOA, to just ask them for that, or is that a process you go through?
I would call Diana Schuler and ask her to send it to you.
Okay.
Or I'll send it to you, and then you can tell her you want your specific counties. How about that?
That's even better. Thank you.
Okay, will do.
Well, and for us, there's a lot of information already on the Workforce Investment Board website. So I can already pull like employment trends, wage reports, regional WIOA plans and stuff off the website. So you may even be able, some of you out there may even be able to just find things already pulled.
Okay, great. It's just, Patty, it's just basically about making sure it aligns with our district then, right? Because the WIOA boundaries might not. So then we just kind of have to be asked them to divide that up like Bonnie did with ours.
Yeah. Okay. Yep. And then my contact at our WIB was also just saying, like, what else do you need? And if there's other pieces, she can run other kinds of reports. So that's pretty much what I'm doing, is looking at what I've already got from them, what I've already got from other sources, and then kind of where are the holes, and sending her questions saying, hey, do you have anything about, like as the regional demographic shift, has that impacted industry in our area? And if so, how? Like, I don't know how I would look at that without her.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, do we have any more questions for Patty or Bonnie?
This is Jonita from College of DuPage. I was wondering if you had a chance to look at the handout that they provided on size, scope, and quality definition from the listening tour, and how do you think that will impact the quality, scope, and sizes defined in our CNL plan? Or,
yeah,
honestly, go ahead, Pat.
No, I was going to say, for us, it's about, to me, I think it's the minimum number of CTE programs of study is going to be more than before for us. But I think for us, I think it's fine. I think it's still manageable. Even if I need to hit 5 programs of study, I can do that. So that's all I've been looking at in terms of size. Jonita, are you thinking of something else?
Well, I was referring, I think I might have brought it up at the listening tour, because it obviously is incorporating the secondary partners as well. That K through 12 sequence keeps throwing me off, because ours really goes from high school through post-secondary experience and then to the university. So we've never really approached our sequence of courses to go even down to, even though we'll do career exploration and have activities for 7th and 8th grade, and now being eligible to go down to 5th grade. But I've never really thought of it as being a K through 16 type or K through 20 process.
Yeah, and I guess I'm not really thinking about how Joliet is going to provide activities or programming to 5th graders. Like, I know you're allowed to do lower grades. I just don't know that we're going to do it. And I don't know that we have to according to size, scope, and quality definition.
Right, but they have it as a quality indicator. So that's why I was getting a little bit thrown off.
But this is for secondary and post-secondary, right?
It's for all of us, so that's why I wasn't sure. I guess we'd have to make sure our secondary partners had a plan to
for that, right, Janita? Yeah. Yeah, because we're like you. We do career exploration, and then there's certain things that we do with, especially 5 through 8. But I hadn't thought about it in terms of any more than that. But it's a good thing to talk to our secondary partners about.
Agreed.
Okay, so in interest of time, if anyone has any more questions for Bonnie or Patty, we can get to those here in a moment. But I do want to go ahead and turn it over to Marcy Rocky. She is with OCCRL. They are the ones who put this wonderful CLNA together, and they do have some technical assistance coming up. So I will hand it over to her and let her explain further.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yep. Yes.
Okay, thanks. And thank you, Bonnie and Patty. That was really helpful to us too, as we're supporting community colleges as they are completing this for the first time. So there was an RFP sent out from ICCB, and so there's an opportunity for 4 community college districts to apply for assistance in terms of completing the CLNA. And so hopefully all of you have received the description of that, the timeline, and the activities. Of course, the RFP and the selection process is entirely handled through ICCB. So at the point that they select the 4 districts and let us know, there's a timeline there that includes, and I know one of the webinars is actually before the colleges have to turn in their interest, but we do have 2 webinars, the first one being Monday, October 21st, that are meant to help people approach the CLNA. And so as part of this, what we are hoping to provide is both facilitation, and then you can see that in February to March, some opportunity to actually have face-to-face interaction opportunities with at least half of your key stakeholders that you're identifying on your CLNA, and also that you would be with at least another community college. So again, as this call is even so helpful for people to collaborate across the state, that we want to create that opportunity as well to have time for your group to work on this in a way that's facilitated by us, and then also collaborate with your colleagues from other institutions. So if there's any questions, I can try to answer to the best of my ability, but as was mentioned too, that, this is considered a draft, and that it's part of the whole process of the state approving its own plan for Perkins 5. So, but again, the feedback even today is helpful, and the suggestions can certainly be forwarded to ICCB either through the listening sessions or directly.
Do we have any questions for the 3 individuals on the call today? Okay, well, Patty, Bonnie, Marcy, I want to thank you very much for taking time to be a part of this call. I think that it's definitely a hot topic right now, obviously. So I'm hoping that this was beneficial to everyone on the call. We will continue our next learning community call in November. If the topics are already posted on ICSPS's website under the Perkins Post-Secondary Learning Community page. So if you see a topic that you feel speaks to you, that your program is excelling in, has innovative ideas on, please email me because I think it's extremely helpful to have individuals who are in the field doing this work talking and sharing their ideas. So again, Patty, Bonnie, and Marcy, thank you so much for participating and being a part of this. And thank you everyone for being on the call as well. And this recording will be posted on ICSPS's website and possibly ICCB's at a later date. And I do know that we have several questions about some of the resources that were mentioned. And so I will be reaching out to Patty and Bonnie to get those as well and share those out also. So we will get all of that taken care of for everyone. So thank you guys so much and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Brittany. Take care,
Thank
everybody.
you.